one-of-a-kind classical music show right here on KZSU Stanford. That is Sunday nights, 7 to 9 p.m., where
Wow, that's so loud. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the April 23rd meeting, 2015, of the Historic Resources Board. Roll call.
Chair Kohler,
Here.
Vice Chair Bernstein, Board
Here.
Member Bowell,
Here.
Board Member Bunnenberg,
Here.
Board Member McKinnon,
Here.
Board Member Ezekiel, Board Member Wimmer. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. We're all here this time. So, staff, do you have any urgent, I'm looking at my order here, and it's just checking. Do you have anything to add to what's happening today, or?
Thank you, Chair Kohler. We have no agenda changes, additions, or deletions at this time. There may be some staff announcements that we can do later at the end of the meeting,
Okay.
but at this time, no. Thank you.
Let's see. Okay, all the cards I have here are for the item, so we will then, there's no changes on the agenda. I guess.
That's correct.
Do we have any minutes? No minutes to approve. Okay, that brings us right to public hearing, item number 1. 757 College Avenue, request by Robert L. McCormick on behalf of Lucille W. Mellish for Historic Resources Board review and recommendation regarding a proposal to remove the existing designation of the subject property as a Category 3 historic site/structure in the Palo Alto Historical and Architectural Resources Report and Inventory. This item was continued from April 9th. So discussions on, okay, so board items is the next section again.
Is it important to
Yes.
declare site visits at this point?
I was just getting to that, but that's good.
I visited this site in preparation for the April 9th meeting, so I was alone. I looked at the property alone.
Next, David,
I haven't been out to the site, but I'm familiar with the neighborhood.
Martin.
Yes, thank you, Chair Kohler. I did visit the site. I also met with Mrs. Mellish, and also at that time that I visited, and then planner Mr. Weintraub also attended. I also met with the, I believe it was Mrs. Mellish assistant. Yes, there she is. And then I also toured the subject property, walked around it, and then just spoke with Mrs. Mellish and just to hear her thoughts about it, and then everything else is in the staff report. Thank you.
Since we're moving right across, I was there last night, took a few photographs of which we might show by myself and didn't talk to anybody.
No disclosures.
Okay.
I have nothing to add. I have not been by the property.
Pardon me, board members, for the interruption. I do apologize. We have a request to please speak more loudly and speak into the microphones so that everyone in the audience can hear what's occurring. Thank you.
In the past, it's been so loud that we've kind of been shy about talking. It's been, yeah, wow.
And I'll disclose that I did go visit the property yesterday and walked down the driveway in between the two adjacent houses and had as much of a look as I could.
Great, thank you. Let's see. So I guess I officially opened the public hearing here, so that,
Pardon me, Chair Kohler. May I please present just a brief staff report?
yep, that's
And
what's
then
next on
I
my
do
list.
believe the applicant would like to present some information as well. Okay.
I have my sheet here, so I'm all set. Okay. Open the public hearing, staff recommendation.
Thank you, Chair Kohler. So the item is a request by the owner to remove the existing designation of the property as a Category 3 property from the historic inventory. Procedurally, there is no set procedure to remove a designation. There is, of course, a procedure to make a designation, so it logically follows that the procedure to remove a designation is the same to make a designation. And that procedure is a hearing of the Historic Resources Board and a recommendation to the City Council, and the City Council then makes a final decision. As far as the review standards that are in the ordinance, the ordinance indicates that listing is contingent upon meeting criteria for designation and upon meeting the definition as a Category 3 property. And I'd like to point out, in terms of staff's analysis, we've reviewed the criteria for designation, and I'd like to point out that according to staff's analysis, the property does appear to meet at least 2 of the criteria. Criteria number 2, which is the structure or site is particularly representative of an architectural style or way of life important to the city, state, or nation. And criteria 3, the structure or site is an example of a type of building which was once common but is now rare. And in staff's analysis, the property also does meet the definition of a Category 3 or 4 building, and I will read that definition. Contributing building, Category 3 or 4, contributing building means any building or group of buildings which are good local examples of architectural styles and which relate to the character of a neighborhood grouping in scale, materials, proportion, or other factors. A contributing building may have had extensive or permanent changes made to the original design, such as inappropriate additions, extensive removal of architectural details, or wooden facades resurfaced in asbestos or stucco. I'll also mention, so in summary, staff believes that, or staff's analysis indicates that the property does meet criteria and definition, and that its condition is essentially the same as it was when it was initially listed on the historic inventory by the City Council. I would just mention also that I have communicated or contacted the applicant as a matter of course to let them know that the existing Category 3 property does have development incentives that are available to it, and it does appear that there may be a scenario by which a new lot could be created and developed in combination with preserving all the existing structures that are in that vicinity. But that is something that would be up to the owner to pursue. Staff has reached out to the owner to let them know that we are available to consult with them if they would like to investigate that. That concludes my staff report. Thank you.
Any questions for staff at the moment? Okay.
No, actually, mine's of the owner, so.
Okay. And then any, okay, so we'll move on to applicant presentation. It says here you have 10 minutes, a limitation at the discretion of the board, but I don't think we're going to worry too much about 10 minutes today.
I am Robert McCormick, architect. I am representing Mrs. Mellish today. Mrs. Mellish is accompanied by her family, Jane Weinbott, and neighbors Michael Schmidt and Patricia Griffin. And after a brief statement about my background and comments about 757, I will turn the microphone over to Mr. Brandy, an architectural historian who will give a presentation to the board. This is Mr. Brandy. My background. I lived and worked in College Terrace from 1974 to 1991. I was a restoration architect for 984 California Avenue, included in the Palo Alto Historic Resource List after the Loma Prieta earthquake. I also worked as a restoration architect for 8 years for the C. N. Ellenwood Mansion, a National Historic Landmark in Pacific Heights in San Francisco. I am very familiar with 757. I leased this house from Mrs. Mellish for a number of years as to maintain a local address. I want to make some comments about 757. In my opinion, this residence lacks historical integrity and cannot be used to demonstrate a way of life at the time it is estimated to have been built. There is no evidence that a school teacher or librarian ever lived there, or that anyone suggested, as the list of former owners ever occupied the house. They might have been landlords. A better example of a way of life is 984 California. This is a typical farmhouse. It has simple proportions, it lacks ornament, and is of an owner of lesser financial means. On the other hand, there was once a Victorian called Big Blue. That residence occupied the corner of Princeton and College. It exhibited a lot of ornament, demonstrating an owner of much greater wealth. With regard to the reference made to the ornamental barge and eaves that have fish scale rounded shingles, these shingles are all of the same width. They were machine-made, mass-produced, and sold by lumber yards like Ichrome Lumber that once was located on El Camino through the 1970s. I used these type of shingles on a bungalow in Mill Valley. So these shingles were even added to the modern-day laundry porch addition that was planned for a gas dryer at the back of the house. In my opinion, these shingles do not depict a typical residence built before World War II. Feasibility of reconstruction. In 2005, Mrs. Mellish asked me to evaluate 757 College as a feasible reconstruction. This report that I made is included in the HRE prepared by Mr. Brandy. The floors were separating from the walls in this residence. I removed a section of the stucco wainscot at that time and carefully evaluated the construction underneath. What I found was there was no wood siding, no studs. The structure was completely rotted away to the bare dirt below. This structure does not have a foundation, just rotting wood sills. The lath and stucco contractor who is said to have owned the house during the 1930s may have covered the rotting structure with stucco. In my opinion, the house would have to be completely torn down to restore it. It began to self-destruct from the moment it was built. The house has been vacant for over 10 years. Mrs. Mellish requests that the property be removed from the Palo Alto Historic Resource List. Thank you. And now, at this time, I would like to introduce architectural historian, Mr. Richard Brandy.
Do you want to try putting the photograph on? No. Okay.
Good morning.
Yes.
I have a summary, a PowerPoint presentation that summarizes my report, and I thought I would just go through that just to summarize my evaluation of the house. My qualifications are 10 years of experience. I meet the requirements for a architectural historian set by the Secretary of the Interior. I'm on the California Historical Resource Information System, or the CRIS system, as a qualified consultant, and I have a master's in historic preservation from Goucher College and a BA from UC Berkeley. As you know, the house at 757 College is listed as a Category 3 on the Palo Alto inventory. These are just some shots of each of the major facades. This is the east facade, and this shows the stucco that was applied that Mr. McCormick referenced earlier in his comments. This is the other side of the house, showing again the stucco base here. And when I looked at the house, you know, these shingles seems a little suspicious. So I don't think I have a close-up here, but I have a close-up in the report of the fact that the shingles were applied over whatever the material was underneath. That's to the rear of the house with this addition for the laundry. And my analysis really focused on the loss of historic fabric that the house underwent, unfortunately. The roof is covered with some thin membrane, which obscured whatever cladding was there originally. Often we don't, you know, roofs can be, we can make some allowance if the roof has been recladded in another material, but I thought in this case it was a little bit more important because this is such a simple house that has, the materials are so important because it is a simple form. This is an example of where the shingles were applied over, it looks like horizontal siding here, and of course the stucco this is a very high water table stucco, and I didn't do any destructive testing to see what was underneath or behind the stucco, but it clearly is you know, not something you would see in a house of this of original era. Now that it is listed as Category 3 or 4, and they do the ordinance does say that it can, if it is a good example of an architectural style and it relates to the character of the neighborhood, it can have extensive or permanent changes such as inappropriate additions, removal of details, and facades even resurfaced in asbestos or stucco. Now, when I read that initially doing the evaluation, I thought, well, that seems to be a pretty open, what's the word, permissive standard that would allow a lot of loss of historic materials. But in looking at sort of historic preservation in general and what we're trying to do in preserving buildings, I took really the guidance from the National Register in terms of looking at historic integrity and how much materials can be removed before it's really should no longer be considered a historic resource. And the crux of the matter is, does the resource have enough integrity that it has its ability to convey its historic significance? And so, you know, so that when we look at that, we have a common sense, anyone walking by has a common sense notion that this building conveys some historical significance. And in this case, in this building, or this house, at least the inventory form was concerned only with its appearance as a folk Victorian, which is actually kind of a fancy name for this very simple house. But in that time period of 1906, or maybe in that time period, that's the closest we have to it. The inventory form had no other basis of significance, and I did not revisit that or look for anything else that could have historic significance. So if it is significant as a folk Victorian, according to the National Register, and I'm sorry for all the words on this slide, but I wanted to give the whole quote here. But at the bottom, you note that basically this says that if a building known for its architectural style or construction techniques must retain most of the physical features that constitute that style. It can lose some historic materials and details if it retains the majority of the features that make up its historic architectural significance. And then the last part of that is it's not eligible if it retains some basic features, but if it's lost the majority of the features that once characterized the style. So in other words, if it's lost most of it, it really should not be considered eligible. It can lose some things, of course, because everything changes and nothing's perfect. We're not looking for perfection, but it has to retain the majority of features. Well, in this case, what's the majority of its features? This was a very simple cottage, cross-gable roof, and this crude barge board. It's in such a simple design, the historic fabric is very important because that makes up so much of what is seen. And I really conclude that after looking at this, really 100% of the historic fabric is gone. If it had wood horizontal siding, which is what I'm assuming based on the little piece that I could see, that's covered with shingles. We don't really know what's underneath that anymore. The roof, of course, has been replaced with this asphalt type material, and the water table, the base of the building has covered in this smooth stucco. And as Robert has said earlier, he thinks there may not be very much of anything underneath that stucco. We don't really know, but it suggests that if the material that was behind the stucco is gone, we really don't know how much of the remaining structure behind the shingles we see is there. I mean, you wouldn't know that until you took it off or did some destructive testing. But anyway, just in the visual, looking at it and conveying its historic significance, it's lost really all of its historic fabric. And this sort of the conclusion is that since it has lost the majority of its historic fabric, it really looks like a nondescript shack. I mean, everybody would say, hey, it looks like an old building because it looks old, but given the loss of historic fabric, I don't think it really looks like a representative of a folk Victorian, and therefore I conclude it's not eligible for listing.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Questions? Let's see. I'm sorry, I'm getting behind here.
I think Mrs. Mellish might want to have a couple words.
I'm just looking through the cards here and seeing, yeah, she also has a card, so that's okay. Did she come? Oh, okay, go ahead. Now, do you have a microphone for her?
Just talk. The microphone is vacant. There we go. Oh. Go ahead and talk.
Okay. My name is Lucille Weeks Mellish.
Hold on, let me back her away from that. Okay, go ahead.
And I'm 94 years old, and I would like to have that delisted because I'm surprised that it's still standing because it's full of termites, and it's been vacant so long that it just, I'm surprised that it's still standing. And if I could just tear it down, and also the building next to it, 739, it would certainly improve the neighborhood. And the people that live across the street, it's just an eyesore to them, and I think that they may think that it's really has reduced the value of their property. And I have several children in the neighborhood. They're very inquisitive, and I'm afraid that they're going to go over there and try to get in and get hurt. And that's a big concern to me, because then it's going to mean that they would probably sue me for having this terrible structure there. And I know that what's the guy across the street?
James Cook.
James Cook is on the Utilities Commission for the city of Palo Alto, and he said that the city certainly doesn't need to have such a terrible looking building, and it's just awful. And I hope that that you will delist it, because there's nothing about it that's historical. No one has ever lived there that's of any note. There's no nothing. It's nothing but a piece of junk. So I'm hoping that you will let me delist it and tear the thing down.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a card from Richard Brandi. Oh, that was you, and Patricia Griffin. Okay. Yep.
Hello, my name is Patricia Griffin, and I've been a neighbor of Mrs. Mellish's since 2005. And in the last 5 years, we've become very, very good friends. And I'd like to say that I'm here to support her because I know how much stress this has caused her. I can't add anything to what Bob McCormick or Mr. Randy has said, but that I do know we've had squatters on the property. I've seen the squatters and helped her call police, and we have infestations of squirrels and birds and everything else. But the stress that this has caused her, because her hands are tied, and that is why I'm here mainly to support her in that, because it's just, her hands are tied. And I would like to add that I do respect and appreciate the service you give here. In this case, I think, though, I don't see also the historic value in the community, since I've also lived there for 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there anybody else? Oh, one more person? Oh, yep, here it is.
So my name is Mike Forster. I'm a resident of Evergreen Park, and I support Ms. Mellish's request to remove the historical designation. I agree with everything that's been said here. I'm personally very interested in historical preservation. I'm a member of PAHA, MOA, and San Jose and San Francisco historical societies. But in this case, I agree with her that it's just an old house. Perhaps it was a mistake for it having been placed on the registry in 1978. And one other comment, it's been referenced here, but perhaps staff can enlighten us. In addition to all the historical aspects, there must be some criteria in historic preservation for the usability and habitability of the house. In other words, if it's in very poor condition and would cost an extraordinary amount to bring it back to a usable, safe, habitable condition, there must be something in the historic preservation guidelines from the national or whatever that would recognize that some houses just cannot be preserved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it question time? Or?
It's for historic board questions of applicant and staff.
I wanted to clarify for sure, I'm not sure that I was hearing. I'd like to ask whether you own other property in close proximity to this lot, to this site.
It's on. It's on.
Yes, I live at 2241 Wellesley Street, which is just around the corner from it. And from my late husband's bedroom, I can look out there and see that terrible looking building. And I would certainly like to get rid of it.
Do you own anything else there on College?
757 and 739.
739 is which is right next door to it.
That's just about to fall down.
And that's leaning, so I'm afraid that's going to fall in also. So I'd like to get rid of both of them.
Okay.
And have you looked and thought about some of the historic regulations that might be very helpful to you? Have you had a chance to talk with staff, for instance?
I talked to this gentleman right here, and there was somebody else with him that day.
Martin Bernstein.
Oh, mm-hmm.
David, we'll just go down.
So they've seen the building. They know what a terrible spectacle it is.
So I have a question about how long you've owned this building. How long have you owned it?
Since 1964.
And have you done regular maintenance on the building?
I used to live there, and I had the back was just a porch, just the floor, and we added the sides and the roof, and that's where I had my laundry, my washer and dryer out there, and it was closed in, and then we had a concrete pad poured out there so that we could park our automobiles on it.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Kohler. Got a question for Mr. Weintraub. And then following up on Board Member Bunnenberg's question about the three lots, 739 College, 757 College, and 2239 Wellesley. Picking up on Board Member Bunnenberg's comment about looking at the incentives available for historic preservation and property development. Question for staff. Could you speak a little bit more about what are some of the possible developmental incentives regarding lot line movements, development for potential applicant for this?
Yes, thank you, Board Member Bernstein. I have investigated the potential for different development scenarios that could occur involving all three of the properties that are under common ownership. And I think that's a key to the situation, is that we have three properties that are under common ownership. So the owner has the ability to move and adjust lot lines and merge parcels and do things like that. It appears that there may be, through a series of applications that could be made through the planning department, there could be a way to relocate existing buildings in such a way that the development incentives that are available would actually allow for smaller lots than would normally be allowed to be created in the district, which would allow for existing buildings to be located on new, smaller lots, which could allow for a new developable lot to be created. In other words, a new lot that could be developed as a new residential property that would meet the development standards of the district. So there, and this is not, has not been fully investigated, but it appears that there is a potential for this scenario. In other words, there's a potential for retention of all the existing buildings on all three of these properties, as well as creation of a fourth lot that could then be developed according to modern contemporary standards. So that does appear to be a potential alternative that's available to the owner. I would like to also just respond to an inquiry that was made by one of the members of the public, Mr. Forster, asked about how does the feasibility of rehabilitation factor into the evaluation of a historical resource. At the local, state, and federal levels, the evaluation of a historical resource is based on the historic significance and on the historic integrity. Does not actually factor in the physical condition or the feasibility of rehabilitation. So that is a bit of a conundrum in some cases, but the actual evaluation of a historical resource does not actually factor in the feasibility of rehabilitation. Thank you.
Go ahead.
And as a follow-up to that, I've got a question for Mr. McCormick, if I may. Thank you. By the way, I see you're from Templeton. I went to school in San Luis Obispo, so I know the neighborhood. My question is, as a representative for Mrs. Mellish, and then hearing the potentiality of taking all three parcels and then some kind of redevelopment of that, have you thought about that potential, and have you advised Mrs. Mellish of that potential development idea?
No, because Mrs. Mellish is not in a position to develop any of her properties. To embark on a project like this would be outside of her ability to pursue it. And my contract limits itself to the subject property.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. And then since your contract limited did not include investigating that potential, may I ask Mrs. Mellish? Mrs. Mellish, by the way, it was a pleasure meeting you at the time I met you. I also recall, I think it was, is it Lisa? That Lisa mentioned, I think you are a registered sea captain, I believe. So.
Corps. And I have spent thousands of dollars on trying to get rid of this building, and I should be, I've been forced to spend this money to try to get rid of it, and I should be spending the money on my nieces and nephews who are trying to get an education, and I want to help them do it, but this thing here is taking up all the money that I should be spending for them.
Okay, thank you.
And then also the son of my deceased husband, who lives just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia, is just a few years ago was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and he used to have a big garden and raised his own vegetables, and he had chickens and turkeys, and and could use a tractor and all that, and now you can't do that. And so I'm gonna have to help him, and it just seems like this whole thing is so overwhelming. And I just have got to get rid of these buildings and tear them down and have just an emptied lot. Besides that, there's 757 and 739. There's a whole bunch of gophers that keep digging the place up, and it's just a mess.
Yeah. And then another question, and maybe the representative can answer the question too. So if as Mrs. Mellish mentioned, if the structure were demolished, so how does that help your family goal and your very wonderful and a very important family goal of helping the rest of your family? How does removing this help you in that goal of helping your family?
Well, because I won't have to pay Mr. Brandy and Mr. McCormick any more money.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Okay, so, but there's still value in the land though, so so the land could be sold, it could be redeveloped.
No, I'm not going to sell it. I just want to get rid of those terrible looking buildings, and everybody in the neighborhood wishes I'd get rid of it too.
Okay. As I know that of your sea captain history, something I have thought about, and it's just a general comment, is if there's a certain situation and we're in a certain port and we want to achieve a certain destination or another port, as I've been on some ships also. So sometimes the idea to solve a problem or to reach the next port is to sail straight ahead. Sometimes in the environment, there may be a reason where to get to this goal, we might have to tack like this. And this may be a situation because it is an official listed property. Sometimes the route may not be so direct, and that's why we on the HRB, I mean, part of our role is to be actually a very fair judge for these things. We understand your personal goals, and we understand the report we have. But sometimes it could be a little more circuitous route. As a sea captain, that's understandable how sometimes the physical environment or the political environment or the legislative environment may require us to do that. So that's why we're meeting today. Those are my questions for applicant or staff right now. Thank you.
I'm still a little puzzled about the properties. One of my questions is the structure on 739 that is also owned by you, is that listed in the historic register? Is that an original building on that property? Can you answer that?
Yes, thank you, Board Member DiCiccio. The cottage that is at 739 is not listed as a historic building, either on the city's historic inventory or at the local and state level. It does appear to be original to the property. In other words, it does appear to be the original structure built on the property.
And what about the other property that Ms. Mellich owns?
The property
2239?
The property at 2239 Wellesley is a house, I believe, built in the 1920s, and it's a single-story house. I don't know if it's the first property or first building to be developed on that site or not. It does not appear to be of the same type and style as the other two cottages that are at 757 and 739.
And approximately, what would be the lot size if all of these were combined, these three parcels?
Let me think about that for a
The
second.
first two are what, 4,000 something? So
Yes,
maybe
so to
8,000, 9,000 altogether?
I believe around 18,000 square feet approximately. All three parcels combined would be approximately 18,000 square feet.
Just a question, you can't just eliminate lots to make bigger properties.
Excuse me, I own 2239 Wellesley also.
Yes.
And in 2005, I think it was, I had things of my own, or our own, stored over there, and we cleaned it out and redid it, and that's where Patricia lives right now, who this lady that spoke a few minutes ago.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Kohler. I just want to clarify some information. The current application is only to remove the designation. There is no existing or application submitted for either demolition or development of the subject property, so we're really speaking of hypotheticals. I would also like to point out that the city's policy is that demolition permits are not issued unless development plans are approved for the subject property. So we really can't speak of demolition without also speaking of developing the properties. So I just want to make that clear to the board members. Thank you.
Oh, that's a good clarification. Any other questions? Margaret?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak about my experience going there yesterday, and when I drove up, I mean, I'd seen the pictures of the structure from the reports that were provided to us, and then I drove up and first thought I would just drive by, but it was a little intriguing, so I thought I would park and walk, and I did notice the adjacent property at 739 was in much worse condition. It really is. The whole porch is deteriorating. It looks condemned. And this building, I mean, I think it's rather charming, and it makes me imagine how wonderful it could be. Yes, there's tons of things wrong with it, and it looks like the deferred maintenance is kind of is rather unfortunate, and is it's become overcome by problems because of the deferred maintenance. And it's I mean, it's a shame that these buildings are empty for so long and they haven't been maintained. And I think you're sort of saying that the structures aren't worth any value, but the value has been lost in the lack of maintenance over the years, I think. So I just think that's sort of too bad, and that they're empty and they're occupied by gophers and squirrels. It's just hard to witness that, and you're blaming the deterioration of the buildings, but it's just because they haven't been maintained. So, I mean, that is an issue to some degree, but, and I would like to hear more about what your intentions are for the property once you have, if you take the buildings down. I do agree that they're not safe. I think that there's something that needs to be done. But it would just be interesting to know what your intentions are, because the corner lot is also empty, has a garden on it, so maybe you're just wanting just empty space, I don't know.
You have to wait just a second here.
You have to be addressed by the chair.
Would you wait just a second? Is anyone else, are we ready for him to have a comment? Why don't you go ahead then?
Yes. In my presentation, initially, I described the houses, or the 757, as being completely rotted out at the time that Mrs. Mellish purchased it. It was too far gone. From the moment it was built, it began to self-destruct because of its lousy construction and contact with the earth. So it's not as if any kind of maintenance would have made any difference.
And I'm sorry, what year did she purchase the property?
The property, I believe,
64.
was purchased not 1964, but 1968.
And then you mentioned that it was put on the register in 1978. That's when it was added to the historic inventory list. Mm-hmm. And maybe what was some of the reasoning and background for putting it on the list originally? I
don't believe Mrs. Mellish was informed at the time that it was originally put on the list. She was interviewed in 1978, but you weren't informed, isn't that true?
No one interviewed me at that time.
But you weren't aware they were having hearings to put it on a Category 3 at the time they did?
I don't know how relevant that is. It's okay, we can move on. Yes, Martin?
Thank you, Chair Kohler. I have a question for Mr. McCormick. Let's see, as far as just repeating what Mr. Weintraub just mentioned, that if an application for demolition did occur, that a demolition permit cannot be approved until there's a developmental plan. And a question for staff, so if for a developmental plan, does that need to be a permit issued for development?
That's correct. In other words, planning entitlement needs to be issued and approved prior to issuance of a demolition permit.
Okay. So if the project, and by the way, I believe is this correct that the city council actually is the one that determines if a property should be listed or kept listed or delisted? Is that correct? So HRB is a referring body to the city council. So the city council actually makes the determination for listing or delisting. So if delisting, if the city council did approve delisting, the demo permit then, as we just heard, cannot be issued until there's a developmental plan that's been approved by planning. Are you aware of that, or have you advised your client of such a condition? So.
I advised my client, based on her age, not to embark on any developmental projects.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm just reading what the ordinance is for that. Okay. Thank you. Okay, those are my questions for now. Thanks.
Yes, quite a presentation here, to say the least. It does remind me somewhat of a similar case we heard back in 2012. As board members may recall, 1091 Emerson / 255 Lincoln, which was a somewhat marginal structure that did have a plan for replacement, and the house was eventually demolished, and it was a rather decrepit structure, as you may recall. So.
Oh, are you talking about the Spanish revival? Like the building next to it, the same?
It was listed as 1091. I actually brought the old packet here with me. 255 Emerson. It was reputed to be the house that I believe Steve Jobs was courting his present wife at the time, lived there. It had some interesting historical aspects to it, but that house did come with a redevelopment plan that we looked at.
It's the one on the corner there of Emerson. Any other questions or any? I'd like to just, when I was there last night, I took the photograph that you're seeing on the wall there, walked around a little bit. My initial reaction when I walked up was, this didn't look too terrible, and you get up closer and there are a lot of things that need to be worked on. Oh, that's the one next door, since she owns this property as well. So I'm not sure I have any questions of staff. I think everyone's, I'm about to ready to close the public hearing, so I don't know if there's any other questions for non-public. I mean, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Kohler. I have a comment, but since the public hearing is still open, in case the Mr. Brandy would care to respond to what I'm looking at saying. Mr. Brandy, you mentioned something about the integrity of the property. And you also made reference to the National Register documents. I also have that in front of me here. And it does talk about evaluation of integrity. And then, as you would know as a historian, there are 7 aspects of historic integrity. And I'll just read the titles of those. And what I do see from my opinion on that is that there are 4 out of the 7 aspects of integrity that I think apply to this property. You mentioned 1. I'll just read the 7 aspects. Location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. Location appears to be original location, so I think it meets the location integrity. Design, the combination of elements that create the form, plan, space, structure, and style of the property. There's a lot of space in between the items, so I believe it meets the site design aspect of integrity. Setting, as the staff report indicates, it looks like this is in the original location and as part of the development of College Terrace. I think the setting is the same. Again, a lot of space in between the cottages. Materials, as you mentioned, the materials that are there, certainly there's deterioration of the materials, that's clear, so I didn't include that as much. Workmanship, the craftsman of the building, again, there's a lot of deterioration, so that could be a weak link there. But number 6, feeling. As Board Member Wimmer mentioned, I've been by that several times, and I've been in College Terrace many times. It really does have the feeling of the original feeling of College Terrace, which is, as you know, as everyone knows, a lot of historic structures there. So I think the feeling is certain there. And then association, as Mrs. Mellish mentioned, direct link between important historic event or persons and historic property, probably not so much there. But at least I think there are 4 out of 7 aspects of integrity based on the national definition of that. I think it is met on this site. So I think there's something historic about this if you look at those combination of issues. And I left this public hearing open. If you care to respond, you may or may not. But I'm just making that comment about the evaluation of integrity. Thank you.
Kind of an additional follow-up. In terms of looking at the size of this lot, it is, by many standards, a small, narrow lot. And if you notice, across the street from it, there are several other lots of the same size. This sometimes goes along with a plan to put a small house on it. And so I had you consider that possibility. And the other is that one of the reports says the people were not important because they were just laborers and workers. Did you ever think of framing it as pioneers who chose to come to this area and work near that strange new Stanford University that had just been put in?
Well, let me just briefly comment on both comments from Board Member Bernstein. On my report, I do go through the 7 aspects of integrity. So, but we can, it's a matter of evaluating those and coming to some conclusion. So I won't I'll just make a note of that. And the as far as the house being associated with people important to Palo Alto's history, if I went largely on the research that was done when the building was put on the registry, and they went through, at least they tried to find out who lived there or who owned the property. And as you know, records are very incomplete and sketchy, and it looks like many different people at least are listed as residing, I believe, residing in the house from city directories, but none of them resided there very long. So the fact that a lot of different people rented or lived in the house for a year or two and then moved on it's hard to make the case that somehow these people were pioneers in Palo Alto. If they were associated with early farming, if they were associated with doing something important in creating or establishing Palo Alto or even College Terrace, or if they were College Terrace, Terrace, it sounds like Terrace, if they were associated with Stanford in some way, they were, I don't know, there was a house of an early professor and they had all informal study groups in the house. Any of those and more could be historically significant, but at least the record so far doesn't support any of those kinds of possibilities. So I just looked at that, but with the research that was done, and that's sort of where I came down on that.
I found it interesting that the Hirakawa family was there, presumably a Japanese family, and that apparently they were accepted, whereas we have some other parts of town that have some rather discriminatory no Orientals, no Mongolians in there as the property was developed. And it seems that was not true in College Terrace, because this Hirakawa family occurred again in another house there in College Terrace. And in order to build what we see now, you have to have some workers. They have to live somewhere, or the building doesn't happen. So it's, a matter of perhaps opinion, but also some thought that these workers represented a way of life of that period.
Are you done? Any other questions of public or things? I'll close the public hearing now, and we'll come back to the board for a discussion. And I guess the staff is requiring us to make a decision. Is that correct?
Recommendation.
Recommendation to the city council, that's correct. Anyone like to start? I guess I can fill the void here for saying that down the street is a home that is old, but as time goes on, is the home of a very famous person, but she's still around. Joan Baez lived down the street, and I worked on that house. And Joan Baez lives down in College. So I'm just talking about famous people, and that they're not necessarily all gone. There's still famous people who've lived in various homes, and anyway. Celebrities. Okay.
Looking at the page 8 of the write-up right here, one thing that does stick out to me as being particularly important is the structure or site is an example of a type of building which was once common but is now rare. I think it does follow that sentence pretty much. I think the other question is, has the property lost integrity to the point that it no longer can be considered to be historic? So I'm wrestling with both those thoughts right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Beth?
No, I was asking what your last sentence was.
I guess
Okay.
I was wrestling with the fact that it does represent a building that was at one time common, now rare. It certainly does seem to meet that, but also I'm wrestling with the thought that has it lost the integrity to the point that it's no longer a historic property.
Well, I can answer
Are
that.
you ready for board comments?
When I look at this photograph that's here, and at first glance, it looks like a normal home. And I guess you get up close, and it needs some repair and reworking, and so go back to the other one. Yeah, and so I don't necessarily think it's lost a great deal myself. I mean, technically, it's needs some help, but visually, as you drive by, it looks, I mean, I thought it looked like a pretty nice home until I, walked up and saw some of the, it just hasn't been taken care of, is the problem. It hasn't been taken care of. There's been no maintenance on the house. And that's the biggest problem, I think.
I agree with what everyone said about deferred maintenance. If I might ask the applicant or the city, is there any evidence of any kind of capital improvement on that property in the last, what it would be, 40 to 50 years? Like, was the roof, repaired after they owned it? Or, I mean.
So unfortunately, I haven't done a complete permit history research. Just based on its physical appearance, it doesn't appear that there's been a lot of work done recently. Mr. Brandy did indicate that obviously some materials have been either replaced or added over time. It's not clear when those things occurred. The older photographs that we have seem to indicate that it was in more or less the same condition when it was originally designated in 1978 as it is today.
Thank you.
I would like to address one comment about the roof was replaced in 1991.
Okay, thank you. Exactly sure how that impacts what we're, yeah. Yes, I'd like to move forward. David, go ahead.
I'm going to move that we adopt staff position and deny this application.
I'll second that motion.
There's been a motion and a second discussion of the item.
Well, let me just say that I'm certainly sympathetic to Mrs. Mellish's circumstance, which includes her age and the fact that these buildings need significant work. And of course, her family is, as my family is, and I'm sure to all of us, extremely important to her, I'm sure. But that does not mean that the actions of this board should support demolition of this building. This building could easily, and the properties could be sold in a week. This real estate market would support anything. And in the absence of a replacement to this building and some plan, I don't see how we can support the application. I mean, it's just half there. And as a builder, this can be, this building is in pretty bad shape. The mechanical systems could all be replaced. It takes money, and that money, had it been spent over a long period of time of 48-year ownership, probably not very much maintenance done, wouldn't be in this condition. So I can't support the application because there hasn't been any good faith effort to keep this building maintained.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Kohler. And the reason I'm seconding this motion is thinking about why is this application for delisting here? And my sense, the reason that we are entertaining this application is because of the condition of the property. As mentioned in the hearing, Mrs. Mellish acquired the property 47 years ago. It's been on the historic inventory for 37 years. I believe that there is, at least my impression, that there's something in ordinance where historic buildings must be some level of maintenance. And for the 37 years that it's been listed as a historic property, I think that's why this application is before us, because it has not been maintained for the 37 years that it's been listed. It also meets the definition of Category 3, and that's the ordinance. Something that's been happening on enough number of historic properties where things get issued a demolition permit because of neglect of the historic resource. That's why it's important for property owners to maintain properties, especially if they become listed on a historic resource, so that it doesn't become neglected to the part where we're actually discussing the condition of the property today, 37 years later after it's been designated. So that's why I'm in support of our motion to recommend to the City Council to deny delisting. Thank you.
Just go down the row here, go ahead.
Yes, Matt, could you just restate what you said earlier about possible concessions or accommodations that the city might be in a position to offer?
Yes, thank you, Board Member McKinnon. The city does, through the municipal code, currently offer development incentives to properties that are designated as category buildings. So this property, the existing Category 3 building, does have development incentives that are available to it currently, which include the potential to subdivide into smaller lots than would normally be allowed, as well as exemptions from gross floor area, as well as exemptions from lot coverage that would essentially allow for greater lot coverage and greater floor area than that would normally be allowed. And all those incentives are there to encourage property owners to preserve and retain buildings and rehabilitate them and reuse them rather than demolish them. Thank you.
Anybody? This end? Margaret?
Yeah, and I'm trying to be really sensitive to the owner, and I was thinking from the angle that she purchased the property before it had a historic designation, and then during her ownership, it has been granted a historic designation, and so I was just trying to think about that. But I think we all have to realize that our historic properties are coming fewer and fewer, and we really are making such an effort to hold on to what is actually out there. And I think that the lack of maintenance over the years is really the most unfortunate thing about this property. And I understand that it's not feasible for the owner really to do much of anything with it. So I think there are people out there who would love to have this historic building and would love to maintain it and restore it and put it back to its original condition, and that's what I would like to see. Maybe you could just sell it to someone who would be willing to maintain it and take care of it.
Do you mean you're going to take it away from me? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Are you going to take it away from me?
No, we're not saying
I'm
that at all.
not taking it away from you. I think that you've told us that it's very expensive to restore these buildings. I am in the design industry, and I work on these buildings all the time, and I see how expensive it is, and I'm sensitive to that. But I think the fact that it is historic and the city makes a huge effort to hold on to these buildings.
It's not historic, and it was taken care of all the time I lived there and improved. And this group of people is not going to take it away from me.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next. Any other comment? Beth, go ahead.
And if you do take it, you're going to pay me $10 million. If you take it, that's what the city is going to pay me, is 10 million.
I share and understand your pain, but on the other hand, this is a property that is very rare and a part of the history that Palo Alto needs to know about. And so I will be supporting the motion.
I think I'm not going to say a whole lot because I agree with just about everything that everyone has said. It's a very difficult situation with a property, and the condition of the existing home has not had any maintenance at all for all these years, and that is we've encountered this in the past, and it's just, our goal here is to maintain homes, and it's actually, I think, in a sense, the duty of each homeowner to maintain his home in a certain usable condition, and the building department actually goes around and tries to identify homes that are not being maintained, and I'm not quite sure what happened in this situation. And the inspectors are usually, red tagging homes all the time, that there's physical things on your home that need to be maintained, because it's not just your property, it's your neighboring properties, it's the neighborhood in general that have an impact on lack of care of homes. But I agree, I'm not going to go into it much. I think everyone has said everything that I think is to be said about this. So I would, someone has a motion?
It's already been moved.
Oh, that's right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? That has passed unanimously with all present, and we're all here. Thank you for all coming, and we'll move on to the next item. Thank you. Which is board items. Discussion of Council HRB joint meeting, May 6th. This was continued from the last meeting. Yes?
Thank you, Chair Kohler. So we do have a final revised date for the Council HRB retreat. It is going to be Wednesday, May 6th. I do not expect that this date will change again. So again, the Council HRB retreat has been finalized for Wednesday, May 6th. Starting at 6 p.m. So the HRB hearing portion is 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. So that would occur prior to our next HRB meeting. So this is actually the last regularly scheduled HRB meeting before that joint meeting. So what I might suggest is that the board may want to appoint a subcommittee to work with staff to finish developing the presentation, and that when that presentation is developed, staff will go ahead and send it out to all the board members, as well as post it on the council's website, so that they have that information. So again, just recommendation in order to proceed would be identify 2 or 3 members of the board who want to work with staff kind of offline to finish with the presentation.
Yeah, I was, this has changed a little bit in sense of the way, the timing and the situation. It's my understanding now that we are all going to be sitting up here on this, here sharing so it's not kind of like a round table discussion. We're going to have to be kind of looking back and forth at each other. And I guess we might want to try to have a visual aid discussion or something to put on the screen here. I've been going through my piles of miscellaneous data of, past meetings or houses and various things, and I thought what I would do is within my ability was to take what I can do on 8.5 by 11 and just create a little booklet of some sort, I don't know, 10 to 20, 30 pages or something, so we can hand it out to everybody. And because I assumed originally we're going to be in like one of the rooms where we could put up all our posters and things, which is not really going to be appropriate here. So I think we have to be somewhat precise in how we want to go about this, because these meetings get hijacked all the time. So I'm not sure. I'm kind of open for suggestions, but Martin.
Thank you, Chair Kohler. As I think I mentioned it at our last meeting, and then using the preliminary slides that Mr. Weintraub gave us. And I think what I mentioned last week was that if each of us then, and I've prepared it for my assignment, I've actually written down things that I'm proposing to say at the joint meeting, and I can read that. And then what I asked if other board members would consider making notes of actually what they would say during our 55 minutes of council time on Wednesday. That'd be my suggestion of a thing to do today, just so if each of us read what we're planning to say, and then just kind of say, that sounds good, or maybe you could add this or delete this comment. That'd be my suggestion of what to proceed with on this agenda item.
I would suggest that we allocate a certain specific time for each of these topics so they don't run on forever and we don't get to the stuff that's really important.
Thank you, Chair Kohler. I've actually been asked to rework the presentation a little bit to streamline it and to make it shorter and a little more colorful. And so initially, as this presentation was developed, there were requests to kind of load it up with a lot of information. And as it became apparent that there was just too much information. And so I think so the presentation that you've seen will be pared down quite a bit. I'll be presenting more of a treetop version of what you've seen, and I'll try to dress it up with some graphics as well. And then what I expect is through the discussion that occurs, some of the other items and information will come out and be discussed. So in order to address that particular comment of making sure that we move through and that we get to the meat of the discussion, my portion, if you will, or staff's presentation will be significantly streamlined. And what I'd like to also suggest is we want to make sure that the presentation is unified, that we're not presenting, different presentations from different persons. And I think that's why it would be important as a next step to continue working with a committee of the board outside of this meeting. I think it's a little difficult for 7 board members and working with staff in a public hearing setting to kind of develop. To have a working meeting, if you will. So I would suggest that we have a subcommittee that doesn't require a public hearing, and then we can then kind of finalize that information. And that would be an opportunity to scan the information that, for instance, Chair Kohler has that he wants to show. We could scan that into our PowerPoint and make it one unified presentation. That might be a way to proceed.
All right, thank you, Chair Kohler. As far as the subcommittee, I'd like to volunteer to be on that subcommittee, if that's agreeable to the board.
I thought you already were on it. Okay. Anybody?
Roger.
Beth, go ahead.
I did have one question, and unfortunately, I was not able to attend the opening of the Varsity Theater building. But I wanted to run it by the rest of the board and see whether you saw that as an appropriate item to include in this presentation, or whether or not.
Well, I think it's one of many success stories I think we'd like to highlight, and we could maybe make a visual list of things that we've, yeah. Oh, there's a number of projects around town that I think we were involved in that we ought to make a list. David?
So I'm wondering if our approach to the council and the information we want to transmit is about the things that we think we've done well, or about what we think the council can do to move historic preservation forward in the city, or any of the 15 other items that are in this PowerPoint presentation. I mean, we wouldn't get through item 1 in this, and that's probably why it's going to be cut down. But I'm less concerned and less interested in talking about successes. They can be pictures, and that's fine. We just put them up on the wall here, and they're there. I think I'd like to focus on what we would recommend the council do to help us do our job here.
Yeah,
and that is, we don't have enough incentives. We don't have any incentives.
I agree, totally.
Yeah, I think we need to talk about forward-looking,
Instead of what we've done.
what our visions are for the future role of this board, for the enhancement of the city's position, not to dwell on our past successes. I think they're pretty well. Council knows what we've been doing, appreciates it.
I think the past successes are a foundation.
We should summarize it then. I think we shouldn't dwell on it and make a demonstrative proof of what we did in the past. I think they want to know what value we can add as a board to the city's functioning.
I just briefly, I just think having a, not necessarily, well, somehow supporting our company, a list of success stories, even on just a one-page list, would be pretty important to say, you know, we have been involved in, there's all around you are stories, like even across the street and things like that, and then move forward into
I think a list is appropriate, but I don't think we should go and
No, I'm not
dwell
saying
on
it, but I think somewhere should be listed of items that we, you know.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It just occurs to me, maybe we're coming back around to Chair Kohler's original idea, which was to have display boards, you know, around the room as sort of providing that atmosphere and providing that foundation of success, but not to spend a lot of time on them, really, you know, letting people individually look at them before the meeting or, you know, gaze at them while the presentation's occurring, but then to focus the actual discussion and presentation on forward-thinking items. And so maybe that's the good blend of the two.
Well, I think the poster ideas is a good idea, but I think just a one-page list, and Beth and all of us could probably make this list of, you know, just simple, the Varsity Theater, the Palo Alto Hospital, all these, just a list of all the items we were involved in on decisions, and we don't necessarily have to have a poster for each one, but I think it'd be a pretty impressive list. Martin?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
I think the pictures would be good, though, on the wall. We did that before.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Kohler. Yeah, I think, visual, basically if it's just like wallpaper, and I think, I mean, not even spending a minute to describe, look what's on the wall. So I think council members and members of the public, they'll see the wallpaper. And then if they want to express interest in it, they can. But I don't think we should even spend a minute saying, here's our success stories and here's our past history. I just let the wallpaper talk for itself, and why don't we get onto the business as Board Member Bauer just mentioned. Let's talk about the challenges. And on that note, again, from one of the very early slides that Mr. Weintraub mentioned about overview, and one of the bullet points was challenges. And actually spent some time the last few weeks, actually, I put together a script that, if with permission, may I just read it? And
bring us copies?
This is my draft.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to try to respond to what are the challenges that we may agree are ahead of us with regarding City Council and HRB. So I'll just read this. I'll say during the presentation it would come out just a smooth conversation, but because I'm just reading from my notes, it'll be a little
be fast.
Just join it. Okay, so my plan is to hold up a deteriorated cedar shingle, and then just say I'll show up the center. This is preservation. This is preservation. I'll open a new shingle, say this is renovation, just to get the idea between, it's not demolition, okay, but it's just to show the definition, because we come across those definitions of preservation and renovation, okay? And our ordinances supports renovation. So just get a visual thing just to start off with. And then I'll just read you my notes here. The City Council's cultural challenge is how to implement the goals of historic preservation. These goals include recognizing and maintaining the character and integrity of historic neighborhoods and districts. Implementation of these goals is achieved by utilizing the following guidelines: substantial conformance with the United States Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation as currently adopted by the City of Palo Alto. Substantial conformance with the 7 aspects of integrity needed for a resource to remain on the National and California Historic Registers. A politically administrative challenge is fine-tuning the historic preservation ordinance to simplify the process for project applicants to achieve the city's goals for historic preservation. Suggested fine-tuning: reduce the 4 categories to 2 categories. For example, combining Category 1 with Category 2 and combine Category 3 with Category 4. Second fine-tuning suggestion: allow all historic categories of residential projects to apply for all the home improvement exceptions per Section 1812.120. Each project application would require HRB recommended approval prior to the implementation of the HIE. An example of voluntary financial incentive for conformance with the SISR, utilizing the HIE. For example, I know of a project where the applicant applied for 250 square feet of additional square footage. Looking at the financial incentive to doing such a thing and getting it approved, 250 square feet of new construction, about, say, $300 a square foot to construct. The moment that paint is dry, that 250 square feet is worth $1,100 per square foot in market value. That's $200,000 instant profit, and this is all voluntary, market value of that property, versus demolishing the structure, which can be applied for, and then a restricted house replacement house size. That incentive has no cost to the city. It results in higher assessed value if that's implemented, which is increased property tax revenue for the city and county. Challenges for implementing the Secretariat standards include understanding that the standards are prescriptive, they're not prescriptive, they are subjective. Therefore, applying the standards using a subjective interpretation is appropriate versus applying the standards using a legislatively prescriptive interpretation. Second challenge, applying the standards using a subjective interpretation as a scholarly approach to urban design versus an emotionally reactive approach to urban design. And thirdly, understanding perceived compatibility and differentiation between new buildings and historic buildings. An example of this concern would be in a commercial zone near historic buildings, new buildings that copy historic style dilute the historic feel of the historic building. As far as my comments have gone for representing the potential challenges for the city of Palo Alto.
So in sort of following up on that, Matt, I know how easy it is to be an editor and how difficult it is to be the creator. But on your council slides, on page 16, 17, 18, I think that's really what I would like as a board member to focus on, and I would think that those 3 pages could almost be reduced to 1. So as I'm looking at this, I finalize the Professorville guidelines. And then in parentheses, I just put, we have the principles from the study group. We need the practical guidance. And that's all that should be on the slide for that. You can, of course, have a consulting firm, and we can find a way to pay for it, and I would just say that. We'd need consultants, and we have grants to pay for it. But I don't think we want to put that on the slide. The next, and right underneath that, I like to develop a modern era context statement. This is, I think, one of the most important things that the city can't deal with right now in the current ordinance. We have no way of evaluating the huge amount of property or buildings that were constructed after World War II, and they're all now technically eligible for consideration. So I would say modern era context statement, in parentheses again, it's just the last survey we had is 15 years old, and it doesn't address that next line, the post-World War II stuff. Information gap for CEQA review, I don't even think we want to talk about CEQA. That's like way too complicated. It's a hot button issue for a lot of people in this city. And I don't think that the city / HRB planning, all of us didn't do a very good job 5 years ago with that. And I think that's lingers. So let's not, I mean, that's part of our job, but it's not the primary part. And then developing a modern a context statement for Palo Alto's modern era. I think that's kind of what you're saying up here with Eichler's. So somehow that could be combined. And again, you don't need to talk about the grants. If somebody asks, there are ways to get the money funded without having to go through the General Council. And finally, explore expanding the city's carrots. We don't want to talk about sticks. That's not what we do is not a stick. So I don't think we want to introduce that idea. And I would say the next two lines are actually quite good and could just be, category 3-4 properties located outside the district. I think that this particular visual is quite good. And it ties into the fact that as a board, we can't really affect or influence any development outside of these districts because the ordinance doesn't give us anything to give anybody. So, and again, I would just cross out the last two. The last line, sticks, is a review, and then carrots, maybe preservation incentives. And then that's all needs to be up there. These council members will read that in 3 seconds, and you can talk over this and fill it in. And you're good at that. I mean, you'll be able to walk through this. And that's probably the end of their attention span. So that would be my suggestion. And it's not, and it's with all due respect. I mean, obviously this stuff is tough to do, and I know when I create this for my clients, or I used to, it takes a huge amount of time and revision, and I'm pretty sure that when your planning director saw this, or whoever saw it said, you got to cut this down, that's what they're saying. Anyway, this is a very, very good place to launch a discussion. And hopefully that's where we can get the council to talk about this stuff.
Thank you, Board Member Bauer. Everyone needs an editor. I particularly need an editor, and I very much thank you for those comments. It's exactly the type of feedback that I was hoping to eventually get, having worked through the different iterations. So I think that's extremely helpful. I think it makes sense to essentially implement the suggestions that you've made in terms of how to develop this presentation. Well, I think you've captured, it's not just about the information, it's about the moment and about how the meeting will proceed. And I think you've captured how it probably will actually proceed. And you mentioned the attention span, and that's a very important thing, I think, to make sure that what you pointed out is this is the really crucial information that the HRB wants to discuss, so it shouldn't be pushed down the list. It should be presented more upfront. And so consolidating or eliminating a lot of the information at the beginning, I think, is important.
Yeah, let me just interrupt you to say that it's not that I think that council members don't have a good attention span. They're overwhelmed with the work they have to do. I talked to a council member last week, and I was dumbfounded at the number of meetings and the amount of information they're required to absorb. I don't know how they do it. I mean, I don't think I could do it. So it's not that I think they're incapable of focusing on this. It's just that this is a huge amount of information that we're very conversant in, and they're not, and that's why we're here, and they don't do this. So I think we want to be as brief as possible.
Just following up quickly, so for the subcommittee, is there some way we can get your suggestion somehow, because we've heard it, but by the time the subcommittee meets, it'd be helpful.
You can have it.
Yeah, if you can just show your editing on that, then
Sure.
for the subcommittee to finalize, that'd be great.
That's fine. Okay, yeah, happy to provide it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Beth.
Yeah, Chair. Along the lines, though, of the visuals on the wall, I would remind the board, we're all very visual people. We check out things. There are other people who are not so visual. And sometimes, as is pointed out, the council's overwhelmed with things. So that to at least call attention to the fact that the properties on the wall are things that we see as success stories, and if the council has questions, that they could ask about some of these when we get to the question period. Is that?
I think it's going to evolve. I think an initial outburst from Martin and David, and however it's presented, is very good. And from there, it'll be taken over by the council with their questions and direction they want to go. So I'm not too worried about filling the hour, that's for sure. I think both Martin and David's, I know you guys are going to combine these two together. I mean, it'd be fabulous. I think that's about where we want to go.
Yeah, I think you're right on, Roger.
I mean, the past few ones we've done, it's been amazing. And I think in this situation, it's set up a little differently, such that maybe the item will remain Historic Resources Board and not other projects. In the past, in the conference room, the small conference room, it just was kind of like a bunch of folks sitting around and we like at a coffee break. And this more formal setup will probably keep everyone's minds on the thing at hand, which is the Historic Resources Board goals and requirements.
Yeah, I think they get the important stuff out right away, the first from the get-go.
Yep.
Because otherwise, you're not going to get a chance to get to it.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement on that topic you're discussing right now. As far as Council Member Du Bois asked us about 2 meetings ago, present recommendations for the council. So we have any other thoughts? I had the idea, and from and Mr. Weintraub and I, in our board meetings, we already discussed that, combining 4 categories into 2. So that's one recommendation. Any other recommendations we want to present to the board, to the council?
Margaret?
Yeah, I was just going to make a general statement that I do think that if we keep it very general and not so technical, because I was really appreciating, Martin, what you were saying, but I thought a lot of it was too technical, and I think they're going to get lost in a lot of that detailed information. But I think also, I don't know if as a board we've decided to go from 4 categories to 2. So I guess I think we should be all on the same page in terms of what we're presenting. But I do think that if we just keep it general and keep in mind what we want to walk away with, like what's the end result, what impression are we trying to put upon them, or what when the meeting's over, what do we want to have them have in their head, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I do think that even after the presentation, with the interactive questions and answers, I think that's where the meeting is really going to take off. I mean, I think the presentation is just to get the meeting started and give them sort of a general overview. They are familiar with a lot of the stuff already, but I think in directing of what we want to go forward with, I think that's where the real discussion starts.
I would suggest distilling it down to 2 pages of bullets and nothing else.
I think one thing that's, I'm not sure how aware all of them are. Some have probably aware more than others, but the board actually has, as a board, contributed to a great number of successful projects that are visually, you can see, all over town. But they're not as obvious, maybe, to a lot of folk, like the home up the street here on California, that was going to be a restaurant, and I don't know what it is now, an office, but in the end, it was tough going, but it came out, it's a very well-done project, and that, they're probably not even aware that that was an historic board review project. So I think having some visual, even maybe not visual, but even a list of projects that the board has been involved in might be a nice thing to have.
I didn't bring it.
and to have and to discuss, or just put up on?
Well, number one, to have, and as it may develop into a discussion, but the fact is that even, we couldn't put we wouldn't have enough room here to put all the projects that we've, I don't even know if there is a list anywhere in the HRB files of, there's a number of homes in Professorville that were reviewed by us. There's buildings around here. So.
As far as showing the success stories, you're correct. We don't have like a list of HRB properties. We would have to go through our agendas and formulate that. But I'm not so sure it's important to have a complete list so much as have representative examples. And I think that's the key. In terms of the forward-thinking items, I'd like to take a stab at phrasing what I think the entire board has agreed upon in terms of what they agree are the forward-thinking items. One is to support staff's efforts to obtain grant funding to finish off the Professorville guidelines. I think that's important, to not just say support our efforts to finish the Professorville guidelines, but to indicate that there's an additional step that needs to be taken and that staff is seeking grant funding for that. I think it's also another bullet point might be supporting staff's efforts to seek grant funding for a modern era context statement. So it's not just that these are good projects, but that there's certain activities or certain ways to get to accomplishing these products that staff is moving forward on. And then I think the third is expanding the incentives and making incentives more available. And that could include looking at the category system. It could include looking at expanding the availability to all different categories. And we've also talked a lot about the Mills Act. And I think that needs to be, it's my understanding that the entire HRB feels that the Mills Act could be much more of a valuable tool, and that they might request that the City Council support the HRB's efforts to reactivate the Mills Act as a program in the city. Those are the three areas, I think, that have really risen up to the top. And I think it's consistent primarily with what Board Member Bauer had stated earlier, but I guess I'm trying to maybe rephrase it in a way that doesn't get too specific, but that does capture the intent, if you will. Does that seem to be accurate?
I think that the council will, if they're engaged and they want to have more information, they certainly can ask. And I was also thinking after Martin asked me to provide my edits, which are minimal really, that you might want to take the first part of your presentation, which is kind of history, and make it an addendum, put it in there, put it in the back, and just say, if you really want, because most of the council members, the majority know about the HRB. The new ones may need to come up to speed, and that information would be helpful for them, but I wouldn't hit them with that stuff up front. I would keep it in the back. Make it available, and again, they'll ask for details, so be prepared, and you are. So.
Yeah, thank you, and I think we actually did hit upon the idea of having a printed material handout that would contain a lot more information than we'd actually present on the screen, and I think that's exactly what you're talking about.
And actually, I did go through a bunch of our minutes of meetings and have a rough list of the things we've discussed in 2013, 2014, so.
Well, no, I think you can give it directly to Matt, since he's the hub at the moment. Okay.
So just in terms of how to proceed, I'd like to ask if there are board members that would like to participate in a subcommittee that would be available to work with staff next week to finalize the language and finalize the appearance of how this presentation will look. A committee can be no more than three members in order to actually be a committee and not a quorum. So up to 3 board members who are interested and at the pleasure of the chair to appoint a subcommittee to work with staff next week.
Are there any particular? That's two. Is there another person might be? Okay, we have three right now. Or are you?
I mean, sure, I can.
Well, we have three already, but,
So board members Bauer, Bernstein, and McKinnon.
yep.
Okay.
Chair? I would have liked to volunteer, but I am leaving town from Saturday till the following Sunday. But I think it would be appreciated by all the board members is, say you meet next Wednesday or something, if you could maybe rough out and email your agenda items. I think there is merit in general statements and not try and cram everything we'd like to see happen. But I think there are some specifics, and of course I'm a real rallying around the Mills Act, which I think in this term, that's a specific that's very significant. I agree with Bowers that the CEQA, you know, is probably not only kind of complicated but controversial.
Sure.
So it would be helpful, and then maybe I can communicate with, you know, Margaret and I were sort of on the same subject matter.
Well, we could put the Mills Act would be like within the incentives bullet.
Yes, but a specific incentive.
Sure.
Not too many, not too few.
Sure.
It is a tough thing you're going to do.
Yeah.
I think I get that.
But I know you can do it.
Thank you.
For any and everyone knows we've all been trained in the Brown Act, so all communications are going through Matt, and we're not CCing the whole board because we can't discuss it in a group setting because of the, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So it's no CC, the whole group.
So what I'll propose to do is I'll set up a meeting with the subcommittee next week, and we'll meet as a group. The results of that will be sent out to all the board members. I'll send it out to everyone via email. It'll be a blind CC, so when you reply, you'll be replying directly to me, not to each other. But please do review the materials and reply and give me your comments. I will review all the comments. I'll consolidate them all and implement all those comments. And if necessary, we could have a special meeting called before the actual joint meeting if the board feels that's necessary, and we can determine that, you know, based on the level of comments that I receive and the communications that occur after that. But there'll absolutely be that opportunity for all the board members to comment on the presentation before it's finalized.
Great. Thank you. It sounds wonderful. I think we've really got, well, it'll be quite an evening, so I'm looking forward to it.
And I'd like to volunteer if to help put the boards up on the wall for the background wallpaper.
Okay.
I mean, I'll just be available to do that and come early if I need to.
Yeah, I could mention that individual board members can work together on the wallpaper idea, so long as you're not working together as a quorum. You know, I'm not going to keep track of that. You know, but you have the freedom to work individually with each other, as long as you're not violating the Brown Act in doing so.
Okay, and I have passed to the board members and the staff Palo Alto Historical Association, not societies, newsletter. We have no Palo Alto Historical Society. Things, both the program and the annual dinner might be of interest to the board and to staff.
Great, thank you.
Invitation.
I thought I would, I see that you've, I guess we're talking in general now, correct? We've moved on. I find it, it talks about the Cubberley Room K7 is where the archives, historic archives. I just emailed my Cubberley reunion group that, just to let them know that the Palo Alto Historic Association has moved into one of our rooms at Cubberley where we used to, I think K was a metal shop, or it was it's in the back, right? Toward the, it's...
Although they're in H, let's see, no, we're in K7.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
anyway,
back by the tennis courts.
yeah. We had our 50-year anniversary there a while back, so. Yep. Is it 50? No, maybe, anyway, yeah, 50, 40 years.
It's historic
50.
and it's old, right?
1963, I guess it is 50. Okay, anything else on the agenda to talk about? Mills Act.
Nice.
Mills Act we sort of talked about. It says discussion of Mills Act property abatement. This item was continued. I'm not sure I'm up for continued.
I don't need to talk about it because
Yeah.
we talked about it last meeting.
Yeah, I think we can. Staff announcements?
I could just announce that the Professorville Design Guidelines Subcommittee has met again. The meeting consisted of board members Kohler and Bernstein and myself, just to review the current status. Staff has completed a CLG application and submitted the CLG application to OHP to request funds to contract with the consultant for the Professorville Design Guidelines. And the committee agreed that it made sense to wait for the response from the OHP in terms of determining whether or not we have a grant in order to proceed with the next step. So we're in a holding pattern, waiting to hear if we have money coming. That's the only announcement I have.
Do you want to set a date and time for the subcommittee meeting?
I would like to suggest Monday. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but I do believe that I'm available pretty much most of the day on Monday if subcommittee members are available.
Well, you guys can work that out through.
Yeah, I can send an email. I would
All right.
do that today.
Okay.
Okay. Nothing else. I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much for attending, and thanks for all the audience. And see you next time.
This time, excuse me, accompanied by the Grand Symphony Orchestra of the State.